What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful day today. Beautiful day. It's about 79 degrees, 50% humidity, which is perfect. And I have a little bit of tea here, Lipton. Just made it. I know it's kind of warm out, but I appreciate warm tea on a warm day. Delicious. I love tea. I love tea. Big fan of tea. So, have a shoehorn here. The older you get, the more you don't appreciate bending down to get things or do things. So I put on my boots, and you know, you're younger, the shoe opens up, foot goes in, no problem. Get a little bit older, it's a little bit tougher. And a shoehorn on its own, yeah, that works, but this one you can stand up, made out of bamboo. Stand up and put the shoehorn in the back of the heel, boom, go under, and beautiful, nice, strong, very hard wood. So like I said, it's bamboo made. Little things like that, they help out. Many years ago, when I was a child, I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and we were with my family. What was that? Anyway, with my family, we were down in up in Maine, and we say up for north, but it's really not up. So we were there, staying at this little house, little cottage, and great memories of that place. I'm a big fan of the state of Maine, and we were just, you know, relaxing, had the fireplace going. The TV was a black and white television set on a stand. It was one of those roundish looking things from the I want to say late 60s, and didn't have any reception. It was horrible. It was all snowy looking, and anyway, we had it going there. We were watching something, and then there were stacks of catalogs, which I am a fan of catalogs. Years ago, I used to go down the library, and I would find companies, and I would write them letters. I was a big letter writer in those days, and I would say, can you please send me a catalog of your products? And I used to do this a lot, and every day I would get mail, catalogs, offers, coupons, and I just like going through them. You know, specific products, camping products, that kind of stuff. Now, other stuff too, but that was my main thing. So I was sitting there in this house, probably getting ready to go out to take a walk in the woods in the back, but we were all just kicking back. My father was kind of next to me on the couch there watching television, and I was sitting next to him on a chair, and I had a catalog in my hand from this house. I was going through it. They had all kind of things in there, but what really caught my eye, actually caught both of my eyes, was a catalog. They had a little switchblade section, and I was looking at it, and I go, hey, you know what, I'm going to ask my father, but I'm not going to say, can I get it now? I'll make it look like it's something for the future, and he'll probably say yes, and it'll soothe me. It'll make me feel like it's coming in the future, so, you know, I won't be like, oh, I really want this and I want it now. So I said to him, there were 2 knives in there, 2 little knives. One I really wanted, the other one was, I would settle for it, you know. So the one that I would settle for was a little, like, it was like a rectangular shaped body, and it had a knife on top, a little one. It was like 2.5 inches big, the blade, and then on the other side it had a let's see what that is. Nothing. It had a scissors. And I said to my father, you know, can I get this? And he said, yeah, you can get that. You know, I'm an outdoors guy. You know, I need a thing like that. Maybe carve my name into a tree. So he said, yeah, we get that. And I said, oh, good. And then I said, now I want to ask him what I really want. I said, when I turned 17, which was way down the line, I said, can you get me this? And I showed him the knife. And he said, yeah. He probably said 17. What was it? 8, 9 years away from now. Who remembers? I still remember today that I said that to him. So that knife that I wanted back then was a buck knife. Buck knife. And I've always been a fan of the buck knife. You always see those guys with the beards that drive trucks. They always have one of these attached right here on their belt. I don't know what they use it for, cutting apples up. So about 12 years ago, I was looking around knives and stuff, and I found the buck knife. Look at that, beautiful. That's a beautiful knife. Look at that. Beautiful knife. And I said I'm gonna buy that, and I bought it. It's got good weight to it. Very, very solid knife. Very sharp. Look at that. Buck knife. Made in USA. So it's a good quality. It needs a little polishing. I don't carry it around. I don't know if it's legal to carry it around. Some people have. I still see guys, you know, they're truckers. They always have a knife on the side. I want to tell them, what's the purpose? What do you have that for? Is that self-defense? Because by the time you get this out, by the time you're fighting with fighting with a knife is very hard, and you have to be willing to use it. You can't just, you know, show it and go, you know, look at. You can't. You have to be able to use it. And most people, they're not willing to cut somebody up into pieces, so they just use it to kind of scare people off. And then that person who they're trying to scare off, they may take it from you and use it on you. So I don't carry this, but it is. It's still sharp. I can feel it's very sharp. It'll penetrate any portion of your body. Very sharp up here. But I've always been a fan of buck knives. Buck knives. It's the 110. 110 made in USA, but it's high quality. Very, very solid. It's not flimsy at all. I mean, I got a lot of knives. And may I say, the sheath, good quality, nice leather. It's what I like. I like leather. I know I have other sheaths than nylon, but the leather one, it breaks in, it forms in a certain way, and I really appreciate leather sheaths more than the other ones, the nylon, or what's the other one called? It's like different varieties. But they have what's the Benchmade. I have a Benchmade. Good company, solid, but I have the metal ones. I know they have plastic ones, plastic handles, whatever it's made out of. They're too light for me. I want some weight. When I buy something, I want it to be a little bit heavy. You know, I don't have an issue with carrying a knife that's a couple of ounces heavier than the plastic version, but I want it to feel, you know, solid. And so I have Benchmade, I have Spyderco, I have some of those. I buy them, I look at them for a few minutes, and then I toss them in the drawer. You know, Spyderco, great company, very sharp blade. There's a few. When I went to Alaska, I bought some knives up there, you know, from the Alaska Knife Company. Very good quality. Oh, I'm wearing this shirt. Got that in Alaska. That was last summer. So anyway, my father, I never mentioned it again, you know, about this at the age of 17. I never said to him, hey, he wouldn't have remembered. He would have been like, you said that to me? I don't remember. But I never mentioned it. I just ended up buying it on my own. And like I said, I don't know, maybe if I went out camping or something, I would attach it, because it has a thing back here. I don't know what it's called, but your belt goes through there. But maybe if I went camping or something, I'd take this along. You know, in the old days in the wilderness, people had to have a knife. You know, you had to have a knife. A knife was very handy, an axe, tarp, Rope, very important. You don't want to get caught in the wild without a rope. You know, you had to know maybe 5 or 6 different knots. No, nobody knows that stuff now. Now we would perish if anything like that happened. You know, if farming shut down and we had to survive on our own, 80 to 90% of us would vanish within 6 months. The place would be vacant. You know, everything would be empty. Nobody at the mall. Nobody would be there. We'd all vanish. We don't have the experience to survive if anything goes wrong. We depend on the kindness of others to survive, and also we depend on the fact that they're motivated by money to provide a service. If that would have vanished and the farmer said, I don't need that, I'll just grow my own stuff, I'll survive on my own, and that's enough for me, the rest of us would look like POWs, and then we'd end up dying. Good tea. So I was reading last night, Hadza tribe, Hadza, I think that's what they call. They're a tribe in Tanzania, Hadza, and I'm fascinated with this group of people. First of all, there's not that many of them left, about 13 to 1500, but they are survivalist in the true sense of the word, true sense. You know, they have homemade bow and arrows. They have a couple of dogs, a few dogs they go out with, and they can live off the land. I mean, they have skill. They track down animals, they hunt them, they use a slingshot efficiently. So I was thinking, I have a show that I enjoy watching. Matter of fact, they probably have a new episode or a new series already in the can, as they say, and it's called Alone. So it's basically a show about 10 individuals. They drop them off in remote locations. It could be Alaska, it could be in Canada somewhere, it could be Victoria Island, could be in South America, but they drop you off there with minimal amount of equipment. You may have a knife, an axe, fishing gear, maybe small stuff, nothing, you know, major, sleeping bag, and then whoever survives the longest, I think it's 100 grand or 50 grand. Should be 100 if it's not, but it may be 50. But anyway, they give you a, you know, a prize at the end if you're the last one standing. And you know, it's very difficult. You see them and they're all experts, they say, in their field. They're all like really good at hunting, making traps, all that stuff. But when you leave them alone there, you look and you go, I don't know, are you really that good? You know, it doesn't look like you can make it more than, you know, a couple of months out there. You wouldn't be able to survive indefinitely. Eventually you would end up hitting a wall and just saying, yeah, I can't make it any further, I'm gonna die here. But I was thinking, that show contacted myself, go back to my letter writing days, and write them a letter and say, you know, why don't you get, you know, somebody from that tribe, Hadzabi, go to Tanzania, and just say to them, you know what, we have a show in America, it's like a reality show, and you have to survive the longest on that show, and you guys have great skills. Now I know that somebody will say to me, well, they're good as long as it's a group of them, but I think even one of them is good enough. You know, we'll see what one has, you know, to offer. But I think that would make a good Alone episode, or not episode. I keep saying episode, but it's a series. It's not just one show. You get those guys, you pick, it doesn't even have to be the best. It could be the top 10 guy. And it could be the best if you could find the best. I think they're all good though. And you tell them you could bring your bow and arrow and whatever else you need up to, I think it's 10 items. And we'll see if you survive. If you survive, you come back here, you'll be king of your tribe. You'll have 100 grand. You'll be able to do what you want Maybe buy some brand new bow and arrows or other stuff. Maybe some good shoes, because I was watching them. Their shoes are awful. Homemade sandals. I don't know. But fascinating group of people, fascinating, and they have a unique thing. They not only do they make sound like we do for language, but they have a clicking sound they do with their tongue, and I don't know what that means, but it means something because they all do it. So very fascinating, and I see them and I go, these these skills that they have probably would make them win, allow them to win that whole prize. Anyway, if somebody's watching from the show alone, that's a good idea for a show. You can have all the other guys that you usually have on. Sometimes you have a few women too. And then grab a couple of these guys from Tanzania. So, yeah, I was watching. I go, that would be a great idea. Great idea. Now you could do that, and then you could throw a monkey wrench, because it would be a monkey wrench. They're good survivalists in hot weather. I don't know how they would survive in cold weather. So at the beginning, the show usually starts off when it's mild out, and then it goes into the season of snow. That would give them trouble. I think they would be looking around saying, what is this stuff? What's going on here? Why is the temperature so cold? Because they're used to, birds being available constantly, squirrels, but in the wintertime, all that stuff becomes obsolete. You may see one or two birds go by, but it's not going to be like the summer. So, yeah, that's the key to that show. I've always said, it's not, there's two keys. One of them, you have to be a person that can last being by yourself. You can't be a person that misses your family within that. You miss them, but you got to be able to control that. And so you have to be able to sit there and say, okay, I miss my family, but I can keep going. Because a lot of those guys that go on there, they're like, oh, I miss my wife, I miss my kids, I can't do it and then they go, oh yeah, listen up, I'm checking out. And it's the loneliness that got them more than anything. And the other thing that's very important is hunting skills. You have to be able to hunt, and then to know how to process the animal. You can't just hunt and then the animal goes bad. Although up there when it gets cold, I think the food would survive quite a bit. It's like natural refrigeration. But if you have those two abilities, one, to withstand loneliness, which is harder than you think. A lot of people, they're like, oh, I can do it. Yeah. You tell me that when you've been alone for 6-7 weeks, just you constantly. I know every once a week they get a medical checkup, but so what? That's like half hour and they leave, and then you're by yourself again, which can be even worse because you get a taste of companionship there and then it disappears again. So if you have that down, you can go a long way on that show. And then, there's other factors, trying to avoid injury. You walk and you trip, you fall, you break your leg, you get a cut, can't stop the bleeding, you fall, you get a concussion, or you get an infection. You get a little scratch, you think it's fine, bacteria gets in there, and you're done. And you can't go on like, I'll just fight it. Your immune system is only good to a point. After that, they have to amputate your leg or antibiotics, and you can't have any of that. They always say natural antibiotics, they're not that good. Believe me, if antibiotics in nature existed like that, we wouldn't have had all these epidemic things going on in history. Oh, there's a big bird there. So yeah, they always say, oh, that plant does this, it kills that. It does, but they're not that effective. You have to somehow be able to increase the power of that element that's in that plant. Without that, the medication inside that plant, whatever you call medicine, is anemic. It's not strong enough to kill anything. But I have found that no matter how good you are at hunting, at all that stuff, you can only go so far. You think if they left these guys that ended up winning, if they said, I'd just leave them there, see how long they could take it, you think years later they'd still be alive? I don't think so. I think after, 2 or 3 months, if they even went that long, beyond where they went, like say they went to 100 days and they were the winners, and then they came back to them and say, hey, can you go another 3 months here? We'll give you another 100 grand. I don't think they could do it. Because atrophy sets in. And you're basically living on a lot of your body weight too. So you're supplementing it with food, and then you're also losing a little bit of weight as you go. So eventually at some point you're gonna lose a little bit too much, you're gonna collapse, and you're gonna die. LAPD. Yesterday we went and saw a movie which I enjoyed. I was wide awake, fully alert, did not fall asleep at all in the movie. It was enjoyable. I thought the premise was a little bit, but it was enjoyable. It was that Jurassic World thing, whatever it's called now. That's a concept that's doable in the future. I'm pretty sure, they're trying to do that now. They're trying to find some perfect DNA sample where they can bring back the dinosaurs. And eventually, humans will figure out how to create their own genes and create creatures that have never existed. Forget about the ones that existed where you have a sample. I'm talking about down the line, 100 years from now, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, somewhere along the line, humanity is going to figure out how to create genes and DNA and create creatures that have never ever existed in nature. You will see. Now, it may not be in my lifetime, but it will happen eventually. There's too much experimentation going on. Somebody's in there doing something. They probably have a couple of, scientists over at some medical center that are this close to cloning dinosaurs or creating dinosaurs again from DNA that they found in some fossilized sample up in Iceland or something. But I'm always fascinated with just the fact that we're here. The fact that we're here, that there is something rather than nothing. Always in my brain, always I'm thinking about that. At nighttime, like when I was up in, over at the Mediterranean Sea, and we were on that ship at nighttime, I would sit out, on this big balcony that we had, and I would look up and I would look at all these little stars. And I was like, where did all this come from? And why is there something? And even like when I think about nothingness, I've said this other times, but nothingness to me is an empty room with nothingness. But in true, in the true meaning of nothingness involves also no empty space. And that's hard to, that's hard. No empty space, nothing. No atoms, no molecules, nothing. Nothing. No photons, no empty space. It's hard, like the mind is, designed to think in a different way. And designed is not a good word for this, but it's because of a lack of a better word I use it. But it's weird that we're here, and we weren't always here. Dinosaurs predate us. They existed for millions of years before any of us popped up. We've only been around a short period compared to. I mean, I've watched, science programs where they use that analogy. They have a line on the road. It's a mile long, and that's the history of the Earth. Everything that's ever happened. You have the bacteria. You have amoebas, bacteria. And then you have complex life appearing, and reptilian life. You have dinosaurs, all that, and then you have a big section of that line where it's the dinosaurs ruling, and then you get to the end, about an inch of that line, half inch, whatever, and it's modern man, civilizations, and we've only been around a little bit of time. We think we rule, but in reality, we're just a piece of the puzzle that's going to be here for a little bit, and then we're going to vanish. They always say 99.9% of everything that's ever existed in terms of life has gone extinct. Now, I always say, does that mean that new life has come after that and filled the gaps? Because that means that this planet is constantly creating new life. And how long does it take before you get a ton of new species to come in that didn't exist before? Wish I had more done. But I do. I find everything. I look around. I see human beings walking, and I go, we're in this together. A lot of bickering, a lot of hatred towards each other, and all for what? You're only here for a brief flicker of time, and then you're done. You're done. You no longer exist. So we're constantly, oh, that's mine, that's this, I don't like him because of that, I don't like her because... At the end, it's all a mirage. At the end, you take your final breath, and that's the end of you. That's the end of you. But I look at that, I see, humanity walking around, I see the other animals walking around, and I say, this is like the weirdest thing. We exist, we don't know what we exist inside of. We know it's called the universe. We've given it that name. We're part of the universe. We have a weird thing about accepting the fact that we are the universe. We're part of the universe that's alive. We feel kind of like the universe exists, and we're kind of like transplants, just looking at it, observers of this thing that exists. But we are this thing that exists. But I find it strange that we know nothing about anything until we discover it. Our own bodies are mysteries to us. They're mysteries to us. We don't, up until recent years, we had no idea how they functioned. We just knew we were here. Had no idea how we got here. We still really don't know. And the other thing is, a lot of things have to go right in order for you to exist. And I don't mean you specifically, I mean you as a species. Right? I mean, up until 100,000 years ago, say 1,000,000 years ago, just to be in the safe area there. Up until 1,000,000 years ago, humans, intelligent humans that could do mathematics, humans that could build rocket ships, humans that can make airplanes, those kind of humans didn't exist up until recently. So if any intelligent life form was out there somewhere in the universe and was searching for others like us, they would have come here. They would have been like, we make a joke now that they see us now and they go, oh, there's nothing intelligent down there. That's just a ridiculous joke. If they came here 100,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago, and looked, they would have found nothing but primitive life. And here we are now. We have all this, and this is the infancy stages. We have technology like the computers, the iPhones we use, cars, airplanes. We've been to the moon. We go out into space. We have telescopes in outer space that can see the edge of the observable universe. And prior to, like even 10,000 years ago, people were living in rock huts, very primitive life. It's only now, now the past 100 years that have really transformed the world. The discovery of fossil fuels, the discovery of nuclear energy, the invention of the combustible engine, the invention of the electric engine, all that stuff, little by little, has advanced humanity to the point where we are now. Medicine, surgeries. Prior to 1880s, nothing like that existed. They might have had the train maybe back then, right? But it is a fascinating world we live in. Every day there's problems. You turn on the news, every day there's something going on. Every day there's turmoil, disagreements, hatred, violence. Every day something going on. And and you can't live, also, you can't live just saying, okay, I'm gonna die, so who cares? You can't live that way either. But we need to understand that we're here temporarily. Eventually that time expires and we're no longer here, just like we weren't here before we were born. But I mean, a lot of fussing and fighting for an existence that is basically limited. On a happy note, pick one of these up. If you're over the age of 40 and you have a belly, this thing will make your life so much easier. Now I put on my boots with my hands. I could do that, but this makes a huge difference. When I can't find this, I get annoyed. I'm like, where'd I put that damn thing? And then it just pops up right there. And I go, there it is. Very good, very solid. So anyway, I started off by talking, about, well, not at the beginning, but a little bit. I talked about the buck knife, but Hadza, there's a Z in there, Hadz, Hazan. I'm telling you, those people have skills. I would love to go hang out with them for a year and come back and then go on that show alone. I would concentrate on, I can do the other stuff. I can do the tent, the tarp, I can do the making fire, I can sleep anywhere, I can deal with loneliness. I think I suck at hunting. I don't, because I've never done it. I've never done that, so I don't know anything about it. But they could show me all that stuff. I can go on that show and win. If they don't want to bring one of them over here, I could go over there, train with them for a year, and then come back and, they could have my story. They could say, this guy here, he's an expert because he's trained with the people of Tanzania known as Hazan. And then I would give my story. I would be like Tarzan. I would say, these people, they trained me. They showed me how to hunt, how to survive, how to live off the land. And here I am, and at the end I would win. I would win, unless I got injured. I fell off the side of a cliff, down below into a bunch of rocks. Then I wouldn't win. But if we eliminate accidents and things like that, the other stuff I can handle. I can handle cutting down a tree, processing the wood. I can cook. I'm not saying I can like Julia Child, but I can cook good enough where I can survive, on my food. I could fish a little bit I could fish. What else is necessary? I can create a shelter. I could do that. Create a shelter. But weakness, number one, hunting. I've never done hunting. Nobody's ever said to me, "Hey, you want to go hunting?" And if they did, I'd probably say, "No, I don't know how to. I don't know how to hunt." I'd have to be taken. I'd have to be kind of like an apprentice to somebody who's a good hunter. And when I say good hunter, I don't mean a good hunter with guns. That's, I think a lot of people are pretty good hunters if you gave them a rifle. I'm talking about being a good hunter with weapons you made at your house, like, homemade bow and arrow, homemade slingshot, something like that. I mean, they can give anybody a rifle, and they can go and they can spot wild boar, and they can shoot, and eventually they're gonna hit something, right? And then the other thing is processing the food. That looks a little bit, difficult. You hang the animal, then some upside down position, remove the skin. A lot of them save it. They use it to stay warm in. I don't know. I toss that. And then you have to process it. I would throw probably the insides somewhere else. I'd feed the bears with that. But all the other stuff, like the good meat, I'd have to figure out how to process it. I have to watch that website, what's it called? The Butcher Twins? Something like that. There's a couple of the bearded butchers. Yeah, I don't know if they're twins. Maybe there's three of them. Maybe they're triplets. Or I think they're just brothers. I watched that. Very interesting. You see it in the supermarket. New York steak there, New York strip. You see a ribeye, and then you look at a cow, and you're like, where'd that come from? What area? How'd they make that look so good? Even when you go to a shop that has the whole animal, like the half, and you're like, where's that come from? Well, when I watched the, what I call them again? The masked butchers, right? When I watch them and I see how they separate the rib from that, and then they start cutting out the ribeyes and the New York strip, I go, now that looks good. But when I see the animal, that's another thing. I don't know if I could take the animal and put it down. You have to be able to do that. But you know what? I think if it came down to you dying from starvation or the animal dying to feed you, I think at that point you would just take the animal down. And eventually, if you did that enough, it would become second nature. Now, I have never done that, so it just seems hard. Seems hard. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.